Hi, everybody. My name is Chantel Adams. Welcome to Mission Driven Monday. Today I'm here with Jordan Foxworthy. And yes, she does have a very famous last name. She is the daughter of the well-known Jeff Foxworthy. But I'm interviewing her today because I was actually introduced to Jordan a few years ago. We met because of a mutual connection that we had. And I told her about Forever We, and she told me about her involvement at the Atlanta Mission, where she currently works at the Atlanta Day Shelter, which serves women and children in the Atlanta area. And the Atlanta Mission is very well known in Atlanta. It's a very good reputation for serving the homeless. So I'm really excited about interviewing you today. Thanks, Jordan, for being with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited.
You're welcome. And Jordan, even though she was born in LA, she does consider herself kind of a Georgia native. She loves Georgia. And I told her before we came on today, I was like, I feel like home is the place that you long for. And for both of us, that place is right here in Georgia. So it's good to see you.
Yeah,
Are you ready to get started?
I am.
Great. Okay, so our first question is always, tell me about what you're most proud of. What's your proudest accomplishment?
For me, it would have to be getting over a lot of my fears when I was younger. I was a very fearful and anxious little kid. I didn't do a lot, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I let fear hold me back. And it was fear of being away from home, being away from my family. And when I was about 14, my dad came to me and asked me if I wanted to go on a mission trip to Africa with him and a group of dads who were taking their kids on a trip to Kenya for my church. And I said yes, and it was probably one of the bravest things I ever did, because it was really terrifying for me to go. So that was my first time even out of like the United States or far away from. And so to go all the way to Kenya, and I had my dad with me, but it was still really far away from everything familiar, and it totally changed my life, redirected my life on a new path, and actually ended up loving to travel. And I don't know why I said yes to that trip in the first place, but I know if I hadn't, my life would look so different now, and I'm really glad I did. So and it still would scare me over the next few years to like travel, go on mission trips and anything like that, but every time I knew that there would be more to gain from going. And I learned to kind of figure out, okay, what am I most fearful of, and kind of conquer it. I mean, I was scared of roller coasters, so I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go on a roller coaster. Even if I hate it, like, I just have to know I can conquer it.
I feel like that's a really smart way to look at it. You said you were 14, right, when you went on that mission trip? That's really young. I've been thinking a lot about fear myself lately, because I feel like a lot of women who are in the same age range as me, and just to give you an idea of how old I am, I feel like I sort of came of age in the 90s. Okay, so from 1990 to 2000 was the years from like that I was 15 to 25.
Yeah.
And the 90s were kind of rife with a lot of fear. You know, there was like the Unabomber, and there was Y2K, and then in 2001, you know, we had the Twin Towers, and so there's all this fear, and I feel like so many of us live out of our fear because we're afraid of so many things. I mean, we're afraid of getting hurt, we're afraid of not being prepared, we're afraid of missing out. Like, there's so many things to be afraid of, and so, like you said, I just had to do it and overcome, and then know that the next time, the next thing that I was afraid of, all I had to do was say, okay, I can do this because I know I've done it before.
Yes. Yeah. And then I mean, there's still things that scare me to this day. And I mean, some things are just, you're scared of it for a reason because it's, you know, not wise, but there's some things that's irrational fears, like engaging, sometimes like social anxieties will hold me back. Like, well, I don't want to go to that because I don't know anybody, and just pushing myself. And I mean, 99% of the time I don't regret doing it, and frustrated I didn't push myself more in the past.
Yeah. You're so right. Cause I think a lot of times the things that we're afraid of, although the fear is very real, what we're afraid of isn't necessarily real. So going into a new situation with people that we don't know or whatever, while that's scary, it doesn't have to be, because everybody is hoping that somebody will talk to them, right?
Absolutely. And for me, like, I know I keep a really cool head in a crisis, and I can handle like a very intense, like, situation that other people would consider really scary. I can like jump head first into it and handle it. But
Mhm.
it's like the weird little things that hold me back,
Yeah.
be more fearful, if I overthink things. And
Yes.
so it's just kind of reminding myself too, like, look how far you've come, and like,
Hmm.
look at these opportunities you have ahead of you, even just to keep conquering those fears and moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. That's so good. So that was something that you learned at a very young age, that you could conquer your fears. Now
Yeah.
I want to know, what are you learning right now? What are you kind of working on? What are you learning?
Yeah. So I'm in a job, I'm an ambassador at the day shelter, and a lot of what I do is one-on-one interactions with our clients who are women experiencing homelessness. And so what I'm learning right now is how to advocate for others while not taking their voice away, but just
Mhm.
amplifying their voice, and using my voice to help them, but not overpower them and not take theirs away. So it's kind of a strange thing, because there's a part of me that wants to just like be like, I got it, I'll handle everything
Yeah.
for you. And just learning that it's so much better to help empower someone than to take over, because my mind will just be like, oh, what can I do? And I might try to jump in too much control. So I'm learning that balance, and it's helping me in other relationships too, even outside of work, is just helping
Mm.
empower others without jumping in too hard, but just kind of coming alongside of people instead of in front of them, I guess. That's one of
Yeah.
the things I'm learning right now.
Well, everybody wants to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah,
Those three things.
so true. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times when we meet someone who has been homeless or who has
Mhm.
experienced a real hardship like that, one of the
Right.
things that I often hear them say is, I was invisible.
Yep.
No one heard me. And so just to be able to give them a voice and let them know that they've been heard, and not, you're right, like, I'm sure that is a balance, not to overpower that, but to give them that voice that they so want, but they probably don't have
Yeah.
a lot of practice using.
Right. Absolutely. And knowing sometimes what I think that someone needs is maybe not what they actually need or what they believe they need.
Yeah.
And one of the important things we do here is we do assessments for the clients, but we allow them to voice what their needs are or what they believe their needs are. And it can be hard for me, because I might look at a situation and be like, but I think you need to do this, this, and this. And it might not be what they believe they need. And we have to trust them that they know themselves as well as anybody does. And while we want to help them and offer like positive suggestions, if they don't want certain help, then, we want to give them that choice, and that dignity of deciding what's going to be best for them.
Yeah. Um, Also, I guess one of the things is, what's ideal is not always real.
Exactly.
And I think from our experience, like the way that our lives have played out and who we grew up with and
Right.
what kinds of things that we were surrounded with, we have a vision in our head of what
Yep.
should be ideal.
Yep.
When the reality is, you're right, like that might not be something that they need or even want or even
Right.
think that they should necessarily have. Like, just because we think that they need it, they don't
Right.
necessarily.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that's been a good lesson for me, and I'm still working on it. So it's every day it's a new challenge of.
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to bring our own experience, former experience, into current experiences, no
Absolutely,
matter
yeah.
what we're doing. Yeah.
And I'm very much of like a doer, and I'm pretty organized and stuff. So I like to make checklists, and I've had to learn that when you're working one-on-one with someone, especially someone who's experienced trauma, which I would
Mm-hmm.
say most of the women I work with have. You can't always bring a checklist into it. You can't. They're not just steps to complete. It's a person and it's a relationship. So for me, just to like take a step back, it felt at first like, well, I'm not accomplishing anything. Like, what am I actually getting done? All we did today was just talk, and we did everything done. And learning, like, actually those are milestones. Like, just the relational aspect of it is so much more important than just crossing off the to-do list of like, did they get, I mean, like, there are important steps that need to be done, but if we
Mm-hmm.
skip that relational part, a big thing we talk about here is relational poverty, and how a lot of the women that come in here don't have any relationships or any strong ones. So that's part of actually my job description, is building relationships and becoming a friend to me. So that was actually like hard for me, because it felt at first like counterproductive, and then I realized like, oh, this is actually probably the most important part of my job. So.
Well, and you mentioned this, but I bet you're learning how to just be a better friend to the people that are in your own lives too. You know, how can you hear them better? How can you understand what's happening to them? You're probably just more perceptive overall, I would imagine.
Yeah, and like the fixer part of me, when I hear someone explaining like all this pain they've been through, my brain immediately gets like, well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's nothing I can do. I can't fix, a really terrible situation they've come from. Yeah. Just sit there and listen, and that has definitely helped me in friends and family relationships outside of work as well.
Yeah, it's a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, this is the last question. See, this was so easy, wasn't it?
Easy, yeah.
All right, so our last question is, I want you to tell me about your aspirational future. So this is kind of like the future Jordan, and when you think about your future self, who is she? How would you describe her?
Well, I've always kind of jumped back and forth. I've done a lot of work in film production, like documentary, and I do love storytelling. That's a big thing on my heart. I love telling people stories, and that has looked different in different parts of my life. And I try to find ways in my job now to tell people stories. But I do love that. So future Jordan is still going to be a storyteller, I know. And I have to have work that's meaningful to me. And if I'm going to pour my heart into something 8 hours a day, like, it has to be fulfilling, and I have to feel like I'm actually doing something, I'm making a difference. So I don't know what that's going to look like down the road, but I know it's going to have to meet that criteria for me, where like I'm either helping bring about positive change, or, get information out there through storytelling or documentary work, whatever that's going to look like. So I used to be someone who had to have the entire future mapped out. Like, when I was in high school, I was already like looking up my college courses. Like, I know I'm going to take this one this year, and somewhere along the way, like, God kind of shook up my world, and things that I didn't plan to happen did happen, and life looked a lot different than I thought it would. I worked some jobs that I was like, oh, I never thought I'd work with homeless people in Atlanta. That was not something that was originally on my heart. And we kind of fell into it because my dad started volunteering at the men's shelter and brought along the rest of the family to join in. It wasn't something that I was like, well, I'm not really as passionate about that. And I realized, oh, I actually love this. And I didn't know I would love like serving in my own city so much, because I always thought, well, I'll do work over in Africa, because that was like the first big trip, was to Kenya. Yeah. And, have fallen in love with like working with homeless people in Atlanta. So, through different life lessons, jobs lost, new experiences, I'm learning to kind of let go. And it's okay that I don't know a year from now or 2 years or 5 years exactly what I'm going to be doing. Mm-hmm. But I know that, I'm surrounded by really amazing people, and I know what really speaks to my heart, and whatever I do is going to have to like fit into that criteria of, it has to be meaningful and it has to be serving others.
Yeah. Well, I love your perspective on that, because I think so often we get stuck in the trap of making a list of everything that we want to accomplish. Yep. And so many of like motivational speakers say to do that, to write down all these goals and to check them off as you go. And I feel like it's more important, like I feel like you've done, to think about the kind of life we want, not necessarily the things in that order, but the kind of life we want. My life looks completely different than what I thought that it was going to be. Absolutely. I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing right now.
Right.
But I have the kind of life that I want. And I definitely always took the right steps to get to that place. The things that were the most important to me, my family, my faith, serving others, like all of those things that you list, it's easy to say yes when they fit within that framework.
Yep. Absolutely. And if my life now looked exactly like I thought it would 10 years ago, it would be fine, but I would have missed out on a lot of opportunities and a lot of really cool experiences, and wouldn't have met a lot of amazing people. So I'm really glad it didn't go exactly, or it's not going at the moment exactly like I thought it would, because it's a lot more interesting, a lot more like eclectic, and a lot more diverse than my, college age or high school age brain imagined it would be.
Yeah, it always is. I'm so glad things didn't turn out the way that my high school brain imagined.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you. And I hope that all of you have had as much fun as I did talking with Jordan today. Thank you for joining us on Mission Driven Monday. And I hope to see you again next week for another great conversation.
Thanks.